and welcome. I'm going to look at the 2022 DEB mock exam paper section C Python section, and I'm looking at part B. Part A is in a different video. So in part B, you will find a second file called alt_shelly.txt in your folder. Create a new file called question16b.py. Write a program that compares the two poems line by line, checking to see if they are the same. So I actually lost the files for this, so I have just copied the same text for Shelley and alt Shelley into the same one. And what I'll do is I'll change them to see if they're different, if they're the same. I'll change the text files as I go along just to show you. I can't remember whether in the actual exam they were the same or not because I don't have the files. But like I said, I have just created files to match the original. So to get started, we open up Tani. Okay, the first thing we want to do is open Shelley, then open the alt Shelley, reading in those files and opening them on our computer. So it's Shelley. I'm just going to call the file name Shelley. You could call it F for file if you wanted. I'm just going to say file Shelley equals open, and I'm going to put in my file path, and I'm going to ask the computer to read it. I'll get my file path for here. So I have Shelley here. I'm just going to right click on it, copy as path. And I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm just going to change the direction of these. That's Shelley, and I'm also going to go ALT, alternative Shelley equals open, and it's going to be to read the file as well. So my path is going to go in here, and my path is just copy as path. So just open the folder that it's saved in and copy as path. So if you don't have the alt Shelley file, I couldn't find it. All you need to do is just create a new, copy and paste Shelley into a new one and save it as altshelley.txt and just take it from there. And then we can edit the files as we go along to see if they're the same or different. Either way it'll work. It's just a demonstration anyway. So you open the two files. Okay, we're going to read the lines from both. So read lines is my comment here from both files. And that's just your .read lines, which is in your Python referencing guide as you always check that. So I'm going to call it Shelley lines equals Shelley from here, my file name, Shelley.read lines, and my alternative lines, then you can call it whatever variable name you want. Alt lines equals this name here, alt Shelley dot read lines. So I have read in the lines there first of all, so you get marks for all of this. It's very important, even if you don't know how to compare them, that you start the process. So you open them, that will give you marks. You read them, that will give you marks. Okay, now if they're the same, they're going to be the same length. So the very first thing I'm going to do in my program is just compare the length of the two files. If they're the same, I don't read. If they're not the same, I don't need to do any more. Okay, so if one has 16 lines and one has 17 lines, then they're not the same. Just logically, just break down the problem into small parts. So let's just start with that and go from there. So if the length of Shelley lines is not equal to the length of alternative lines, then I'm going to print out a statement saying that they're not the same. Okay, so I'm going to say print, and you make up your statement here. There's no instruction given in this part of the question, so it's up to you to code and make up your own print statements. The files have or do not have the same length or the same number of lines, length of lines, number, might sound better, of lines, hence they are different or not the same, or whatever you want to say. Okay, so if it's not the same length of lines, then they're different. Before you do any more, that's very simple. Okay, else, if they do have the same number of lines, we want to somehow keep track of what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to check for every line in it that they're all the same. So I'm only going to do this for the maximum number of lines. So I'm going to say the maximum length equals the length of Shelley lines. That just tells me how I'm going to set up a for loop and how long I need to keep the for loop going for. So that's my max length, is the length of Shelley's lines, or either or, whichever one you want to use. Okay, because obviously if they're not, if they're moved into this loop, then that means that they're the same. So either one or the other will do here. And I'm going to do for that, for every line in the range, the max length. We could put that directly in here if you wanted. You could put all of that in there if you want. Whichever way you like coding. If you like setting up your variables and breaking it down into smaller pieces, that's absolutely fine. So in the max length, so if the Shelley's lines is equal to, at that position, is equal to your determinant of lines at that position. So if Shelley lines at that position line, now line, I've called it line, you can call it I if you want, is equal to the alternative lines at that position as well, which is called line here. If they're the same, what do we want to do? We want to print that they're the same, but do we want to say, do we want to make it a little bit more elegant and say line 1 is the same, line 2 is the same, because it does ask it to compare line by line. So in order to do that, we'd have to have some sort of a counter or a tracker to keep count of it. So whatever you want to call it, if it's a tracker or a counter, you can set it up outside your for loop. So I'm going to call it a tracker equals 0, and if they're the same, tracker plus equals 1. So you add 1 to your tracker, and then you print your statement saying that line, and it'll be number whatever, which is your tracker line, say number 1 is the same. Okay, else we want to print, else we're going to say again tracker plus equals 1. We're going to add 1 to your tracker each time, and you're going to print line at position tracker is different. That's it. I can just close the files at the end. Again, this is in your referencing guide, how to close the files. Let's run it. DEB 2022 part B. So I never reversed these, you probably noticed that long ago. I'm just going to change them now and hit run again. So it's telling me now that lines 1 is different, 2 is the same, 3 is the same, the rest are all the same. What I'm going to do is just open my file Alt Shelly, and I'm going to put this word up on top. I'm going to save it and replace it. That's fine. So now when I run it, the files don't have the same number of lines, hence they are different. And I'm going to delete that word Shelly, and I'm going to save it again. I hit save and replace, and I run it again, and now they're all the same. So I've done it a couple of different ways there just by editing the file. So I've done the first one where the first line was different, I've done the one where they do not have the same number of lines, and then I've done the one where they're all the same. So you're comparing line by line in this piece of code. I'll just zoom out for you there for a second so you can see it. I hope this has been helpful, and thank you.